Your position has been eliminated due to organizational restructuring, Morgan explained during a brief Teams call. Her voice carried the rehearsed sympathy of someone who delivered the same message multiple times that week. I'm Ethan Reeves, 42, former Chief Innovation Officer at GreenSpark Technologies in Austin, Texas. For 14 years, I had architected solutions and nurtured teams that transformed us from a struggling tech outfit into an industry leader in renewable energy software. Every revolutionary platform, every game-changing algorithm, my fingerprints were all over them. I didn't protest or reveal any emotion when Morgan delivered the news. I simply inquired about severance details and disconnected the call with professional courtesy. That was 3 weeks ago. Today, sitting in my home office, I reviewed the non-compete clause in my employment contract. The language contained loopholes, significant ones. The legal team at Global Renewables Corporation, our acquirer, had been careless. They had assumed employees from a smaller company wouldn't notice or possess the resources to challenge their oversights. My phone lit up with another message from Sophia, our lead systems architect, the sixth engineer to reach out since the acquisition announcement. You warned us about the new executives. They're dismantling everything innovative we built. Are you still considering that venture we discussed? I set my phone down without responding. Not yet. Timing was crucial. The acquisition had made headlines across the energy tech sector. Global Renewables, a Fortune 500 giant, absorbing our promising upstart. The press release lauded our complementary capabilities and shared vision. Morgan Williams, their newly appointed division president, had promised minimal disruption. We deeply value the talent that built GreenSpark, she'd said. Empty promises. The first wave of layoffs came within 10 days. I opened my laptop and refined the business plan I'd been developing for months, not because I'd predicted my termination, though I'd had my suspicions, but because I'd recognized the company's trajectory shifting even before the acquisition. The leadership had become obsessed with quarterly earnings instead of innovation. When Global Renewables made their offer, our executive team had practically fallen over themselves accepting it. Their eagerness should have been my first warning sign. In the kitchen, I poured myself a strong black coffee and studied the digital whiteboard I'd created. It displayed GreenSpark's top clients, their challenges, and the solutions our team had crafted, solutions that would soon be dismantled by people who didn't comprehend their value. Below the client names was a list of 6 engineers, the brightest minds at GreenSpark, people I had personally mentored. People who were now quietly asking me what came next. I hadn't responded because my strategy wasn't fully formed, but it would be soon. I had joined GreenSpark when it was just 13 people operating out of a renovated farmhouse. The founder, Samuel Rivera, had a vision for revolutionizing commercial building energy management systems but lacked the technical infrastructure to realize it. I developed that infrastructure, building our first viable product, working 90-hour weeks while my marriage gradually crumbled under the pressure. You're married to that company, my ex-wife said during our final argument. She wasn't wrong. For over a decade, I declined lucrative offers from larger competitors. Samuel made me feel valued. This is your company too, Ethan, he would say. We didn't have formal equity agreements, a mistake I now recognize, but there was always the implicit promise that loyalty would be rewarded when the company succeeded. Then Samuel developed heart problems 4 years ago, and his daughter Adriana took over. She had her MBA from a prestigious university but lacked her father's passion for innovation. She focused on making GreenSpark attractive for acquisition rather than building something enduring. The culture transformed. Quarterly metrics replaced innovation goals. When I raised concerns during executive meetings, Adriana would nod politely and redirect the conversation. We'll revisit that later, Ethan, became her standard response. We never did. 7 months ago, I overheard Adriana in the conference room with 2 Global Renewables executives discussing which departments would be redundant after the acquisition. My division topped their list. That night, I began outlining what would eventually become the blueprint for Summit Innovations, a competing firm built on everything GreenSpark was abandoning. I kept my intentions private, continued performing excellently, and waited. If they decided to retain me, I would remain loyal. If not, I had a contingency ready. The first indication that my position was truly endangered came when Morgan scheduled individual meetings with every department head, except me. Then I was excluded from strategic planning emails. Finally, Nisha from Human Resources requested, just a quick conversation about your team structure. Still, I updated all documentation, trained junior engineers, and made myself seemingly indispensable. Or so I thought. 3 days before my termination, Morgan requested access to my project archives and development roadmaps. I provided everything promptly, professional to the end. When the team's call came, it lasted exactly 8 minutes. She didn't know that while she was explaining my separation package, I was already messaging Sophia. Time to discuss that project. Dinner at my place tomorrow, 6:30. 6 engineers showed up. They all shared similar experiences, sidelined by new management, innovation shelved, concerns dismissed. They were waiting for someone to build something better. The moment that truly crystallized everything was watching Morgan's first company-wide presentation. 8 weeks after the acquisition, with 42 people already terminated, she stood on the stage that once showcased our technological achievements and unveiled global renewables integration roadmap. GreenSpark systems will be phased out over 24 months, she announced, as we transition to Global's enterprise architecture. The architecture she referenced was outdated by at least 4 years. Our team had developed solutions specifically because Global's approach couldn't handle the complexity modern clients demanded. Now they were scrapping our innovations to force-fit their existing framework. In the audience, I watched the remaining engineers exchange knowing glances. They understood what this meant: years of work erased, client needs ignored. The very innovations that had made GreenSpark valuable enough to acquire would be dismantled. I didn't speak during the Q&A, didn't challenge Morgan's assertions about synergies and economies of scale. I simply observed who nodded along with her statements and who stared at their tablets, avoiding eye contact. After the meeting, I walked to my car in the parking garage and sat there for nearly an hour, engine off, contemplating. This wasn't just about losing my job. This was about something I had helped build being deliberately dismantled by people who didn't grasp its value. That evening, I finalized the business plan I'd been developing. What had started as a contingency was now materializing. I created a secure messaging group with the 6 engineers who had come to my house after my termination. If you're serious about building something superior, I have a proposal. Discretion is essential. All 6 responded immediately. For the next 3 weeks, we met evenings at my house. We identified the flaws in Global's approach, the opportunities they were missing, and the clients most likely to be dissatisfied by the changes. We mapped out exactly what made our GreenSpark systems superior and how we could evolve them further without violating intellectual property laws. I used my severance package to secure a small office space and file the necessary paperwork to establish Summit Innovations. The name was deliberately chosen to evoke elevation, rising above what GreenSpark had become. The day after receiving my final paycheck from Global, I received a message from Adriana Rivera. I heard you might be starting something. We should talk before you do anything hasty. I didn't respond. There was nothing to discuss. The time for conversations had passed weeks ago when Morgan decided my 14 years of contributions aligned with nothing in their corporate structure. Instead, I sent a different message to my team of 6, office space secured, legal documents ready, timeline accelerated. Are you prepared to resign tomorrow? 6 variations of yes came back within minutes. I closed my laptop and looked at the framed photo I kept on my desk, the original GreenSpark team from 14 years ago. Samuel's arm around my shoulder, both of us grinning at the first working prototype. This one's for you, Samuel, I said quietly. We'll build it right this time. 3 months after launching Summit Innovations, we secured our first major client, Vector Max, a mid-sized manufacturing facility that had been using GreenSpark systems for years. Their operations director, Marcus, had worked closely with me on customizations for their specific energy management needs. Global's integration team doesn't understand our requirements, Marcus explained during our pitch meeting. They keep trying to fit us into their standard package. We demonstrated our new platform, built on GreenSpark's core principles but with significant improvements. Marcus signed a contract the same day. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from Global Renewables' legal department, citing breach of non-compete agreement and theft of proprietary information. They demanded immediate cessation of operations and threatened litigation. I had anticipated this. Our attorney, Amani Washington, reviewed the letter and confirmed what I already knew. Their non-compete is poorly constructed, she said. They reference energy management solutions too broadly, And they have no evidence of proprietary theft because there isn't any. Still, fighting a Fortune 500 company would drain our limited resources. I decided to approach the situation directly, requesting a meeting with Morgan. She agreed, perhaps believing I would be intimidated. We met at Global's gleaming downtown office. The GreenSpark logo was now relegated to a small corner of the reception area. "You understand this can't continue," Morgan said as soon as we sat down. "Your company directly competes with technology you helped develop while employed here. The technology one developed while employed here is being phased out according to your own integration roadmap," I replied calmly. "And my non-compete specifically prohibits using GreenSpark's proprietary systems, which we aren't. Summit's architecture was built from the ground up." Morgan's expression hardened. "Regardless, you violated the spirit of the agreement, and you've poached our employees." Former employees who left voluntarily after the acquisition changed their roles. She leaned forward. "Ethan, let's be practical. Global has virtually unlimited resources for litigation. You have what? 3 months of operating capital? Why put yourself through this? We could bring you back as a consultant during the transition. Excellent compensation." There it was, the trap. They didn't want to reinstate me. They wanted to bind me legally while they neutralized any competitive threat. "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing up, "but I'll take my chances with Summit." That afternoon, Global escalated. They contacted VectorMax and 2 other potential clients, warning them about potential legal issues with Summit's technology. "Marcus called me immediately. They're threatening to audit our existing systems and void our maintenance agreements if we work with you," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "We can't risk that disruption right now." Within 24 hours, we lost all 3 prospects. Our runway suddenly shortened from months to weeks. The team gathered in our small office that evening, faces tense. They looked to me for direction. "They're playing hardball," I acknowledged, "but they've made a strategic error." I pulled up an email I'd received that morning from Samuel Rivera, GreenSpark's original founder. He'd been silently watching the acquisition unfold from retirement. "Ethan, I've been following what's happening. Global didn't just acquire GreenSpark's technology, they acquired its problems too. Call me. I think we can help each other." I looked at my team. Global is so focused on crushing us that they're neglecting their integration. We know the weaknesses in GreenSpark's original architecture better than anyone. Samuel says they're already experiencing system failures with key clients. Sophia nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her face. "And those clients will need solutions. Fast solutions. Global can't deliver in time." "Exactly," I said. "They're trying to bury us in legal threats while their technical foundation crumbles. We don't need to fight them directly. We just need to be ready when their clients start looking for alternatives." The meeting with Samuel changed everything. We met at his lakeside home outside Austin, away from corporate eyes. At 74, he moved more slowly than when we worked together, but his mind remained sharp. "They didn't just buy GreenSpark for the technology," Samuel explained, spreading documents across his dining table. "They bought it for the client contracts, specifically the Helios Energy Group account. Helios was our largest client, a regional utility provider serving 4 states. Their contract alone represented 35% of GreenSpark's annual revenue. What Global doesn't understand is that Helios's infrastructure requirements are unique," Samuel continued. "Their grid management system was customized extensively. You led the project, Ethan." I nodded. 5 years of development nearly burned out my entire team before we got it right. Samuel slid a confidential memo across the table, internal global communications forwarded by a board member who remained loyal to him. They were promising Helios seamless integration, while planning to force them onto standard global architecture. The timeline was impossible, a 6-month migration schedule for a system that had taken us 5 years to build. Even worse, it dismissed specific requirements as unnecessary customizations that would be standardized. "Helios's CEO doesn't know yet," Samuel said quietly. "But when they begin implementation and the limitations become clear." I finished his thought. "Helios will face service disruptions, possibly regulatory issues if they can't maintain required reporting." Exactly. And here's what Global doesn't realize. The contract I negotiated with Helios includes performance guarantees. Significant penalties for systems that don't maintain 99.8% uptime. This was the piece I hadn't known. Global hadn't just acquired our company. They'd inherited obligations they couldn't fulfill. No wonder they were so aggressive about shutting down Summit. They feared we might approach Helios before their integration failures became evident. But there was something else in Samuel's expression, a personal edge to his involvement. "Why are you helping us?" I asked directly. "Global paid you well for the acquisition." Samuel's gaze hardened. "They did. Then they used clauses in the agreement to devalue the final payment based on integration costs." Adriana didn't understand what she was signing. The deal that made headlines? We received about 65% of that figure, and my daughter's stake was wiped out entirely. There it was. Global had manipulated the acquisition to pay less than promised, using complex financial mechanisms that Adriana hadn't detected. They hadn't just discarded the GreenSpark team, they'd cheated the founders too. "Does Adriana know you're talking to me?" I asked. Samuel shook his head. Adriana took a position with Global's corporate development team. She believes she's being groomed for executive leadership. His voice carried the weight of fatherly disappointment. "She'll learn eventually." As I drove back to Austin, a new understanding crystallized. This wasn't just about my termination or Global's poor business decisions. This was about systematic corporate predation, identifying smaller companies with valuable client relationships, acquiring them under false pretenses, extracting what they wanted, and discarding the rest. The engineers they fired, calculated losses. The promises they broke, negotiating tactics. The technologies they dismantled, inconvenient complications. I pulled into my driveway and sat in silence for several minutes, processing the implications. Then I called Sophia. "Contact the team. Meeting at the office tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. We need to accelerate development of our Helios-compatible system, and I need you to pull every piece of documentation we have on their grid architecture." "Are we going after Helios?" Sophia asked, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Not yet," I replied. "But we're going to be ready when they start looking for help, and they will, sooner than Global expects." We had 7 weeks to prepare for Helios's inevitable crisis. The team worked around the clock, developing a platform that could seamlessly interface with Helios's existing infrastructure while providing the improvements they would soon desperately need. I maintained a careful distance from Helios executives, knowing Global was likely monitoring any contacts. Instead, I focused on building our capacity and evidence base. We documented every public failure in Global's integration process, creating a comprehensive analysis of where their approach was fundamentally flawed. Meanwhile, Samuel activated his industry network without directly referencing our strategy. He began raising questions at energy sector conferences about the technical challenges of forced system migrations. The conversation was happening exactly where we needed it, in the professional circles where Helios's technical leaders participated. The first major crack appeared 6 weeks into our preparation. Global initiated the first phase of Helios system migration and immediately encountered the issues we had anticipated. For substations experienced monitoring failures, creating gaps in regulatory compliance data. Helios's chief technology officer, Dr. Renata Kim, publicly described the issues as expected transition challenges. But privately, according to Samuel's contacts, she was livid. 2 weeks later, when the second phase caused a 6-hour reporting blackout across an entire service region, the situation escalated. Helios issued a formal notice of deficiency to Global, triggering the performance guarantee clauses. Global's response was telling. They assigned blame to inherited architectural limitations from GreenSpark. They were setting up a narrative to void the performance guarantees by claiming the original system was defective. That was the opening we needed. I drafted a detailed technical analysis demonstrating how the failures stemmed not from GreenSpark's original architecture, but from Global's incompatible integration approach. Samuel delivered this document personally to Dr. Kim. 3 days later, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Coffee? Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Eastside Brewing Company." It was signed simply RK. When I arrived at the cafe, Dr. Kim was already seated in a corner booth. She got straight to the point. "Your analysis matches our internal findings," she said quietly. "Global is attempting to force us into their system to avoid maintaining our customizations. The regulatory risks are unacceptable. You have options," I replied carefully. "Do I?" "Our contract with Global is binding. Breaking it would trigger penalties that would exceed our annual technology budget. Unless Global is a material breach through performance failures, I suggested, which your legal team is likely exploring right now. Dr. Kim's slight smile confirmed my assumption. We would still need an immediate alternative. Regulatory reporting can't wait for a new vendor selection process. I slid a flash drive across the table. This contains a technical overview of Summit's platform. It was built specifically to address the issues you're experiencing. We can deploy within 3 weeks with zero regulatory interruption. She pocketed the drive without examining it. Global claims you violated non-compete agreements. They've made that claim, yes. But their legal position has significant weaknesses, which our counsel has documented. I provided a second flash drive. This contains our attorney's analysis. Your legal team will find it illuminating. Dr. Kim nodded once. I'll be in touch. 2 days later, Global announced an emergency stabilization of Helios systems, effectively admitting their integration approach had failed. Their stock dropped 7% by market close. That evening, I received an official request for proposal from Helios Energy Group, bypassing their normal procurement process under emergency provisions. I gathered our team. This is it. Helios needs a solution immediately, and we've built exactly what they require. Everything we've worked for comes down to this proposal. Sophia looked around the room at our small but determined team. Should we be concerned about Global's response when they realize what's happening? I shook my head. They've created their own crisis. Now they'll have to watch us solve it. The Helios board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 10:50, my phone rang. Unanimous approval, Dr. Kim said without preamble. Expedited contract execution. We need implementation to begin on Monday. Within the hour, our attorney confirmed the contract was clean, no hidden clauses or traps. Helios had agreed to our full implementation fee plus a 5-year maintenance agreement. The numbers were substantial enough to secure Summit's future for years. More importantly, the contract included specific indemnification against Global's potential legal claims. Helios's attorneys had reviewed our position and confirmed what we already knew. Global's non-compete claims couldn't stand up to serious scrutiny. The news hit the industry by mid-afternoon. Global's stock dropped another 11%. Their legal team immediately filed for an emergency injunction to block our contract. The hearing was scheduled for Monday morning, the same day our implementation was set to begin. When we arrived at the courthouse, Global had 5 attorneys present, led by their chief counsel. Morgan sat behind them, her expression tight with controlled anger. The judge reviewed the filings efficiently, then looked directly at Global's team. Your non-compete agreements appear to prohibit using proprietary GreenSpark systems, but evidence suggests Summit developed independent architecture. Furthermore, Helios's filing demonstrates urgent public interest in maintaining utility service reliability. She denied the injunction without further deliberation. As we exited the courtroom, Morgan intercepted me in the hallway. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Global doesn't lose." I met her gaze steadily. This was never about winning or losing. It was about building something that actually works. I walked past her to where my team waited together. We left to begin the implementation that would secure both Helios's systems and Summit's future. The victory felt complete 20 months after the Helios contract. Summit Innovations had grown to 31 employees. We occupied an entire building in downtown Austin, with views of the hills that had witnessed both my professional collapse and resurrection. The Helios implementation had been flawless, completed ahead of schedule with zero service interruptions. Word spread through the industry. 5 more major clients migrated to our platform within a year. Global eventually abandoned their legal pursuit, focusing instead on containing the damage to their energy division. Morgan Williams was reassigned to a subsidiary in another country. Adriana Rivera departed for a venture capital firm, wiser for the experience. Samuel occasionally stopped by our offices, pride evident as he watched a vision reborn. He never officially joined Summit, but his guidance remained invaluable. On the 2nd anniversary of my termination, I received an unexpected email from my former mentor at GreenSpark, the person who had hired me 14 years earlier. "You built something better than we ever could have," he wrote. Several of us saw it coming but couldn't prevent the acquisition. Some victories take time. I closed my laptop and walked to the conference room, where our team was celebrating the launch of a new platform version. These were no longer just colleagues. They were partners who had taken the same risk I had, believing that competence and integrity would eventually outperform corporate politics. Later that evening, I stood alone on the rooftop terrace of my home, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky. The bitter taste of betrayal had faded, replaced by something unexpected: gratitude. Without Global's arrogance, without Morgan's dismissal, Summit might never have existed. I hadn't just reclaimed my career. I'd built something more aligned with my values than GreenSpark could have become under Global's direction. Sometimes getting pushed out of the wrong place is exactly what you need to find the right one.